welcome to Wednesday night devotions. We are here. My name's Brie, this is Andrea, and we are so excited to have you join us tonight. We are both Sabbath keepers and we love it, and we're really excited to share with you some of the practical elements of keeping Sabbath. So I hope you get something out of it, and I hope you enjoy our conversation tonight.
So you might be sitting there thinking, I don't even know what Sabbath is. So let's just kind of name what Sabbath is first as a start. So basically Sabbath is a day set apart each week, devoted completely to stopping and resting and delighting in the world, in our own lives in it, but above all in God himself. So we're kind of assuming in this time that you have seen the sermon from last Sunday. So if you haven't, we would really encourage you to go back and watch that online, because we're not going to cover all of that again. There was a lot of time spent in Bible verses on Sunday, which we're not going to do today. We're going to do kind of the practical things of that. So if you haven't seen that, please go back and have a look at that. But here's pretty much where we landed on Sunday. And that is that God is a Sabbath observing God. We see that in Genesis 2. He's a Sabbath commanding God, which we see in Deuteronomy 5, and a Sabbath giving God, which we read in Exodus 16. We also saw in the New Testament that Jesus was a practitioner of Sabbath. He participated in Sabbath every week. He also called people back to the heart of it as being a day of restoration and healing. So with that in mind, we think Sabbath is a great thing to integrate into your life. Yep. It's such a countercultural thing for us to do these days. And I think, I don't know, probably in the last 50 years maybe, we've completely kind of lost the plot with this in the Western world. So it may be new to some people. So tonight we're just going to go through a whole lot of questions that people might be asking about this, and hopefully that can help you getting along with practicing this too. So the first question is, what day should I practice Sabbath on? Does it have to be on a particular day? So the Jewish tradition of the Sabbath starts at 20 minutes before sundown on the Friday night and goes to the same time on a Saturday night. The Christian tradition is a Sunday, which was kind of known as the Lord's Day because of Jesus' resurrection. I never understood the Lord's Day thing as a kid. I just used to think, well, what about the other 6? Do we not have to make them the Lord's Day either? So I don't know, you might have some confusion around that like I did. Obviously there's people like us who actually have to work on a Sunday. So Sunday is never going to work for me for a Sabbath. Work for here can be anything sort of between 8 and 14 hours on a Sunday, depending what's happening. So I have to pick a different day. I choose to have my Sabbath on a Friday at the moment, so I start that Thursday evening. What do you do?
I Sabbath on Monday. It's great because it's the day after Sunday. So after a long day at church sometimes, I get to have my Sabbath the next day. Just refuel, spend some time with God. And it's the only day that worked with my uni schedule. So yeah, it worked out really well.
Yeah, but you made it work, didn't you? Like you moved some things in your life to make it work.
Yes, did some reshuffling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the key, like we don't want to be legalistic about this. Jesus showed the heart was not to be legalistic. But I do think the key is to try and find a day of the week and stick to it as much as you can. If you can do a 24-hour block, that is what is ideal. I know that some people just won't be able to do that to start with, but do what you can. If you can set aside half a day, do that. If you can only set aside a couple of hours, at least do that. But have in mind that you would eventually love to get to the 24-hour period on whatever day works for you or your family. Another question I've had asked Brie is what's the difference between a Sabbath and a day off, which is a great question because you can have a day off but it not be a Sabbath. So I think kind of in adulthood anyway, your day off tends to be spent running around doing errands and cleaning the house and doing the grocery shopping and mowing the lawns and working on your house project or whatever you have to get done just to keep life going. Whereas Sabbath is a day that you rest and you worship. So I think it's really important to know the difference between the two, and what that means is that your day off stuff, the errandy kind of things, need to be done on a different day of the week. So you might have a whole day set aside for that, or you might just chip away at those things bit by bit on the other 6 days. So do your house cleaning on one day, your shopping another day, whatever it is to make time for the Sabbath. I think the other thing that's really important to make note of is that these days it's really very easy to get rest, as in restoration, proper soul deep rest, confused with distraction and entertainment and numbing ourselves. I just think of how many people flop on the couch and just spend hours in front of the TV or watching Netflix or, playing computer games. I don't know. What else do people do to numb themselves these days?
Video games, I hear. I never got into video games myself, but I think you covered most of them there. It's a really important point not to confuse restoration with relaxation. I think of Sabbath as a day of spiritual rest, which can be a little bit messy sometimes, I guess. And it should be hopefully physically resting as well, because when we're spiritually rested, I believe it affects the other areas of our life, your body, your mental space, your emotions. So,
yeah. Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned emotions, because the temptation when we just try to distract ourselves from our lives, it's like we're trying to escape from the chaos of our lives, which isn't what Sabbath's about. Sabbath's about actually finding God in the midst of whatever's going on in your life. So I think Sabbath is a beautiful day to actually engage with your emotions and name it for where you're at. Spend some time with God and share with him how you're feeling and what you're struggling with and what hurts at the moment, and sit in that space with him. Whereas, when we tune out and try to distract ourselves, we don't actually do those really important things. I read something recently, and what they were saying was basically, how many of us actually get finished with binge watching TV and then find ourselves saying, I feel so alive in my soul right now. I just feel so much clarity around this season of my life. I'm just so full of God's joy, which probably doesn't usually happen when we've just binge watched TV or played video games for hours. But that's the kind of thing that comes from Sabbath rest and soul rest, that we do find that joy and find God in the midst of our stuff, whatever our stuff is. Yeah. Another question a young guy asked, actually, which I thought was very perceptive for a young adult male, was, do you actually need to prepare for Sabbath? So what do you reckon, Brie? What do you do?
I think it's just pretty practical that, if you're taking a day out, then there's obviously things that have to reshuffle, like we talked about earlier. So I usually take a look at a to-do list the night before or the afternoon before and see if there's things that I need to get done now that, can't wait till the day after my Sabbath, and I'll try and get those done. But usually on my Sabbath, if it's something that I would normally tick off a to-do list, then I will leave it. So, I also tell my family my Sabbath is tomorrow, just letting you all know. Just so that, there is that space for understanding and for sometimes the silence and solitude that I also take on a Sabbath as well.
Yeah. And it's kind of ironic because we're talking about a day of rest and then needing to prepare and actually do some work to make sure that day is uncluttered. But that's so true, to be able to do what you really, really need to resolve the day before so that your next day is uncluttered, but to remember too that you don't have to have everything done. I love the Jewish idea of Sabbath because it starts at 20 minutes before sundown, not when they're done with their stuff for the day. So, you know, they don't even get to choose the time. It's actually the sun, it's creation. It's the time that the sun goes down that they actually choose to start, not when their job list is complete.
Yeah, that's good.
For me, as I mentioned, you kind of need another day for those day off kind of errandy things. And on a Thursday, late Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, you'll see me doing a number of things that I do the same every week. So for example, I'm not going to relax if my house is messy. So I do a quick run around and make sure the house is tidy and, you know, vacuum if I need to, if there's stuff on the floor that's going to annoy me the next day. I do a load of washing so I don't have to worry about that the next day. I actually write my to-do list for the following 3 days, which kind of indicates what my personality's like. So I sit down and I write out my to-do list for Saturday, Sunday and Monday so I can get all that out of my head and it's down and put aside. I have a bit of a think about how I'm going to spend my Sabbath. I'll check the weather to see if it's worth doing something like driving down to the beach. I put my bottle of Portello in the fridge. We have this funny thing in our house which has become the Sabbath day Portello. That's Portello, not port. But yeah, just a funny little thing that we do. I actually go to bed early to make sure I wake up rested the next day so I can delight in it rather than be just totally exhausted in it. I turn off my alarm. I just remind my family that I'm Sabbathing the next day. I've been doing this on Fridays because I wanted to work it out myself before I invited them into it in case it was horrible and terrible and a really bad idea. But it's brilliant and wonderful and I will be changing my day to be able to include my family. But at the moment I remind Jonah that he has to get himself up the next morning and get to school and that's not my responsibility. I take off my Fitbit, which is kind of weird but very purposeful because it doesn't matter what the time is on Sabbath because I wake up when my body wakes up and I eat when I'm hungry, so I often, you know, don't have lunch to mid-afternoon. I remember the first time I didn't wear it, Jonah looked at me and said, "But Mum, don't you want your steps on your Fitbit?" And I went, "No, I don't actually have to achieve anything today, so I'm not going to count steps today." And just things like that. And I do also pray as I go to bed that night for really good Sabbath rest, that God would help me to enter that rest. So what it needs to look like for you could be completely different to the two of us, but that's what our worlds look like. Another question I've been asked is, are there things that I shouldn't do on the Sabbath? And we've mentioned on Sunday that this is not about rules, it's not about being legalistic, but at the same time, knowing what we are like as humans, sometimes it's good to just put some boundaries in place. So you decide for yourself what you are going to avoid on Sabbath, like Bree said before. If it's something that she can tick off a to-do list, she won't do that on Sabbath, and I love that. I guess some other things, some boundaries that I've put in place for myself is I try really hard not to shop on Sabbath. Don't surf the web. I don't read a pretty housey magazine that's going to make me want more stuff because I can actually delight in what I've already got. I don't need more stuff. I try not to talk about stuff that I need to get done, which is hard for me, but I try. I try not to organise my family, which is another thing hard for me to lay down. I try not to multitask. I try not to hurry through my day. I have a tech-free day. I'm very deliberate in turning off my phone. The world actually still works fine without me on my phone. In the day, I don't check emails. I just, leave tech aside. So it's really just a way of putting all of that aside to slow down and enjoy being with God. Have you put any boundaries in place apart from the to-do list or not thought about that?
I turn off. I'm the same. I find I can breathe deeper and just, clear my mind easier when I have all my tech off. So I turn all of that off the night before. And I love that you take off your Fitbit, because once I heard that you do that, I started doing that. These are just suggestions, and it's, you choose for yourself, but it's really good to hear different suggestions, because I love that I don't wear my watch anymore. It's great. What else do I not do? Obviously working really hard to keep peace with my family, especially in lockdowns when everyone's at home. That's something that I find really interesting. I find a lot of my Sabbath days, I come to the end of them and there's always something that's happening in the family that makes me a little irritated normally.
Your family's not perfect?
No.
Wow, there you go. Everybody, the Bartlett family is not perfect.
No, we are not. So that's definitely something that I'm conscious of on my Sabbath, that just from a spiritual sense is, Satan would work hard to destroy something that God has commanded. So just being aware of keeping peace. That being said, I do try to, not just do something that fills my soul, but something that makes me really happy, whether that's exercise or not everyone likes exercise, and I'm not saying I love it, but I find that afterwards I'm really glad that I did something that moved my body and made me feel energized in that way as well. Yeah.
That's a great segue to the next question. Good job. Which is, what can I do on a Sabbath? And I think the thing that I really would love people to hear is that this is all about, it's actually all about God, but it's not all about you. But you can take into your account your personality, your stage of life, and what you kind of need to ask yourself is, what would bring me that deep sense of joy and delight, and orientate my heart back towards God if that's kind of got a bit lost during your week, which it really easily can. So it's up to you to decide what your Sabbath practices look like. There is a set of Jewish best practices which are actually very gorgeous to have a look at. I've created this document, Getting Started with Sabbath, which you can find on the website under the resource section, and that's actually got the Jewish best practices listed in there. Things like feasting, and they actually begin their Sabbath by lighting candles and the Father saying a blessing over the home, and there's just some really beautiful things that are very deliberate in seeking to keep God at the centre of their Sabbath. So have a look at those. But then ask yourself, what would bring you that sense of deep joy? For me, it's been a really interesting 3.5 months. I'm naturally a to-do list person. I'm sure I was writing them from the moment I was born. And the to-do lists in my world were never done. There was always more. I was one of those crazy high achievers at school. I would decide at the start of the year what award I was going to win at the end of the year, and then I would work towards it. I was a praise seeker, I was a people pleaser, so real perfectionist streak. So all of that's in my background, and I think I've laid that aside now. I really hope I have. But for me, having come from that background and also being in 47 years of Sabbath deficit, I've just spent 3.5 months learning how to stop and learning how to rest. And I think I've done a lot of staring, which sounds kind of weird, but not staring in a creepy way, but more noticing things. So instead of sculling my coffee at the same time as being in the bathroom doing my hair and makeup, which I've totally been guilty of in the past, I'll actually get up on a Sabbath day and I go slow. So I put on my fluffy dressing gown, which is what this thing is here, and my Ugg boots, and I will sit on the couch and enjoy my coffee and stare out the window at the camellias and notice the birds coming to drink the nectar. I'll go sit out in the backyard in a hammock and just stare at the sky. I'll go and sit in the sand at the beach and just stare at the waves for hours. I'll go and sit at Lake Wendouree and just stare at the ducks, like they're amazing. And one day I went down to Lake Wendouree and I just felt God say to me, just watch this, it was a coot, and just watch how amazing I am. And I sat there and watched how the water just runs off its feathers and how its legs and its feet move without getting tangled, and how it can eat these gigantic bits of lakeweed, which is kind of like us eating an entire pineapple without choking. Like, they're incredible. Just to stop and slow down and notice those kind of things. So I've done a lot of that to start with.
Yeah, wow.
What are the things you've enjoyed?
I totally agree with the staring thing.
It's not just me.
Oh no.
I love that.
I think it's an awareness of the world around us and appreciating, because if we don't stop to appreciate, then we can't thank God for them if we don't even realise that they're there. So the staring thing is very relatable. Watching the birds outside. I find nowadays, and I said this on Sunday, that the things that bring me the most joy are things I did when I was very young. So a few weeks ago, I rolled out a big piece of paper on our kitchen bench and pulled out all the paints and just finger painted all over this piece of paper. And my mum thought it was gorgeous and wanted to frame it. And I was like, oh, it's really not. It's a bit of a mess. But I kept it because, for me, it just painted this picture of delight and just childlike wonder. And I think that's the same picture that you painted with just describing the things that you do, as it just feels like awestruck wonder of God and the world around us and where He is in all of it.
Yeah.
So what else do I do?
You're deliberate in spending time with God.
Yeah.
So what do you do in that space? What does that look like for you?
It depends each week. This sounds overly spiritual, but it really is just the reality. I wake up most Sabbath mornings and just say, God, what do you want to do today? What should we do together? And I'm learning that we can do things together, that it tends to become a list for me, even in journaling, something that I love. I used to, I have to journal every morning, or every time I spend time with God, I have to write it down and things like that. So the moment that it feels like it's becoming like a to-do list, I put it down and just say, okay, what should we do next? And find that He always has something in mind, whether it's colouring or, I don't know, dancing, whatever it is, walking along the lake, staring at birds, whatever it is. As long as there's delight and joy in it and it's something we can do together. Even silence is great.
Silence is great.
Silence,
Big advocate of silence, you all know that. Asking some of the staff what brings them joy and delight, it was really interesting. So this just shows you how different we all are. So what came up in that conversation was riding motorbikes.
Yeah.
Other people, it was camping or sitting by a fire. One staff member said roller skating.
Yes.
Lots of people love getting out in nature. For me, I would be happy to go sit at the beach. For somebody else, they might need to go and do something physical and climb a really hard mountain. So you do you. You work out what brings you to that place of joy and delight with your eyes focused back on God and go for it. It's the most brilliant day of the week. It's my favourite day.
Yes.
I should totally say that Sunday's my favourite day of the week because I get to come here and be with all you amazing people. That's my second favourite day of the week. Sabbath tops it. And it's the day of rest that I take now without any apology and with absolutely no guilt, because God told me I could do that, and it's truly wonderful. I think the thing about Sabbath is you can't understand it until you actually enter it.
Yeah.
And then it suddenly makes sense once you're there. Do you reckon?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right, so we've had some people say, what about families? Like, what do you do with kids? Because they're, a beautiful blessing, but they're there all the time and they're exhausting. And I did say in the 11 o'clock service something that I didn't say in the other services, which was an encouragement to parents. So if you haven't heard that, go back, it's kind of near the end. But I just wanted to quote something different today, which a guy called AJ has said, and this has really stuck with me, which is teach someone not to Sabbath and they will be hostile to it, and pass that along to the next generation. Teach someone to Sabbath and you will raise up a generation that knows how to rest in the presence of God. We will always pass on our lifestyle to those who follow us. And that's so powerful and so true. And I mentioned at the 11 o'clock service on Sunday how sad I am that nobody told me about this earlier, or maybe they did and I didn't listen, I'm not sure. Because I've missed so many of those opportunities now with my own kids because they're older now. For families, there is a section in here that talks about how you can do this with little kids. Just some things that have stuck out in my head from things that I've read. I'll show you a couple of books in a moment, but AJ, who wrote one of these books, I love what he does on a Sabbath morning. He's got a 7-year-old, and his 7-year-old is just so full of excitement for Sabbath now because they've been so intentional in making it such a beautiful day that he'll get up in the morning and he'll go, and he calls his dad Papa, and he'll go and be hitting his face going, Papa, it's Sabbath. He's got so much excitement, and then they go downstairs and they make this big pancake feast and pour maple syrup all over it. And the beauty of that is that's a hack on the Jewish tradition where the dad would get up in the mornings and give each child a teaspoon of honey to remind them of the sweetness of God's rest.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, wow, that's actually really gorgeous and profound. John Mark, who's another author here, in their family, they start it on the Friday night. They practice the Jewish kind of time frame, and they get out a cast iron skillet and make one giant chocolate chip cookie.
Wow.
And then empty a tub of ice cream onto it.
Wow.
And then sit around this skillet and eat the cookie straight out of the skillet. But they talk about their week. What was the best part of your week? What was the hardest part of your week? Where did you see God in this week? And just choosing to do beautiful things like that. So make it a delight for your kids. Have a box of toys that only comes out for Sabbath. Make it the best ones that they get to practice once a week. Make it a day of feasting. Maybe that's the one day that you have dessert for the week. Maybe we learn to eat a bit more simply during the week and have the special things on Sabbath day. You might want to be intentional about reading a Bible story together or going for walks together, playing together, reading books together. If you're a parent sitting there right now going, but I just need some rest apart from my kids, then work out how to do that, whether you let them watch a movie just once a week so you can go and have a rest or a nap, or if you have a spouse at home, maybe divvy up some time so they get to hang out with the kids for an hour or two while you go and have some time away by yourself to do what you need to do, as in resting, not your to-do list. And then swap, or find someone within the church family who's willing to help you do this and will come and hang out with your kids for a few hours to give you a break. So there's ways to do it. Like, it's not easy. And I think the other thing about Sabbath is that there is the ideal and, the things that we dream of such a peaceful day where nobody argues with anyone in the house and the children all play together beautifully and everybody sleeps in that day. And then there's a reality,
Yeah.
which may look nothing like that. But it's doing what you can to enter that practice. In Hebrews it says to make every effort to enter that rest, the Sabbath rest. But if you would like some help with working that out, come and see me. I would love to sit down with you and give you some ideas for your family. I think another question that other people might have is, what about singles? Because there's people who live alone, and the thought of, having more time alone is not great for them. You might be an introvert and love that time by yourself. But in the Bible and in the Jewish tradition, Sabbath was always about community. So maybe that's the day where you make sure you go out for a meal with friends, or you enjoy a coffee, or you go for a walk with somebody else. Invite somebody else into that space. If you're a family, maybe that could be one of your things to do on Sabbath, to actually invite someone into your home to feast with you, someone that you know would appreciate that company. So, just that there's all sorts of different people who need to do this in different ways, so do what works for you. Do you want to add anything to that?
I think you said this a few weeks ago, just when we were chatting, and it's kind of the guideline for my Sabbath now when I'm thinking of what should I do. And you said, and you kind of touched on it earlier, whatever you, like if you finish something and go, wow, God is so good, then go ahead and do it. So, just whenever I'm picking things out or, deciding what my day should look like, I just go, okay, when I finish reading this book or drawing this picture, am I going to sit there and go, wow, God, like you're amazing. Thank you so much for this life and for who you are. Do whatever orientates your heart back to Him. I love that. It's such an easy guideline. It's so simple.
Yeah. Good.
Yep.
So, another question I was asked, which is probably what a lot of people will be asking, is how do you really fit this in to an already overbusy life? And there's three things that I want to say about that. Firstly, you have to make some really hard and courageous decisions. This is totally countercultural, but totally worth it. I use the words feisty intentionality on Sunday, and they're 2 words to remember, because that's what it takes. You're going to have to make some really hard decisions. And I think it's really important to remember too that we don't make time. God actually makes time. He's already made our time for us. We make room in our lives for this. We don't make time. And that requires, as I said, courageous decisions. So I just have my Sabbath marked out in my diary with a big line through it. There's no room to write anything else in that. Of course, if something comes up that's super important, like somebody's dying, I will drop my Sabbath and I will go and be where I need to be. But on the whole, most things can wait. And also, we're asking you to do less. We're not actually asking you to do more. And once again, courage. And if you feel like you're a bit weak on that, come and see me, and I can help you work out perhaps what's not as necessary in your life as you might think. There's a great quote in this book. I'll just read you about our yeses. The lighting's not great for reading out of books, but we'll have a go. Corrie ten Boom once wrote, "If the devil cannot make us bad, he will make us busy. Be they relational, occupational, or church responsibilities, we are each faced with 1,000 daily choices about what we will give our time and energy to. Because we often do not take time to establish boundaries, we constantly catch ourselves defaulting to yes. Think of it this way. Every yes that takes a little bit of space out of our lives, soon after 1,000 yeses, we find ourselves exhausted and marginless. This commitment creep has happened to every one of us. An open week quickly becomes a hodgepodge of yeses that we gave ourselves to unthinkingly. And before we know it, our calendars are filled with who knows what for the purposes of who knows." So that's,
Wow.
We don't have to say yes to everything. You should say yes to Sabbath though.
Yes.
It's awesome. So if this kind of is dropping for you and you know that this is something that you would really need, I think, God kind of created it with us in mind, so we all need it. But if it's really resonating with you enough for you to step in it and give this a crack, how do you start? So I would say the first thing to do is just set aside a day.
Yeah.
Just to play with it. I mentioned before that, I'm a to-do list person, I'm a perfectionist, or used to be. Hopefully I've, loosened up a little bit. For me, when I was talking to my mentor about wanting to check out Sabbath and have a go at it, she said, well, what do you think God's invitation is to you in this? And the first words that came to my head were taste and see, which is actually a really radical invitation for somebody like me, because in it, it's just have a go. Just have a crack at it and see what happens. Leave the perfectionism behind, and you don't need to understand it all. Just taste and see, and it tastes good. So just set aside a day, clear your schedule, and then protect it. That's really important. If you can't do a whole day, then do what you can. Turn off your phone. You will be okay, and the world will be okay. Invite the Holy Spirit to pastor you into his presence, and then rest and worship in whatever way is life-giving for your soul. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect, and like any practice, it will feel awkward at first. Like riding a bike, it was awkward at first, but you keep doing it and it becomes more familiar. And then just keep going. So set a rhythm, ideally one in every 7 days is great, and protect it. Did you want to add anything to that?
Just that the reason that I started Sabbath was because I recognised, okay, something's really not working here, something's really wrong with the pace of life. And it's really easy to look around at the culture that we live in and the society that we are a part of and just go, okay, something's not right here with the pace of our lives. So it's a beneficial thing. It's not another to-do list thing. It's the opposite. It's throwing out your to-do list for a day and just delighting and resetting the pace, because something just doesn't work when we go against the grain of the universe.
Yeah.
We get splinters. So, it's a real delight to do and a privilege. And don't look at it as something that's a hassle. Even if it takes some rearranging, it's a joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some great books that you might be interested in if you would like to find out more. These are my 3 favourites. Subversive Sabbath by A.J. Swoboda. John Mark Comer, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. There's just 1 chapter in here on Sabbath, but it is one of the best books and most easy to read books I've ever read. And then Ruth Haley Barton's Sacred Rhythms. Again, Sabbath is just 1 chapter in that, but priceless, brilliant book. Let me just read something out of The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And we're almost done. I know this is way longer than usual. The beauty of being online is that if you're still with us, you haven't chosen to turn us off. So what we're saying must actually resonate with you, which is great. So John Mark says this: it's often quoted that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But that's exactly what we do. We get a vision of the kind of life that is possible in Jesus. We go to church or read a book or listen to a podcast. We catch a glimpse of the kind of life we ache for, one of emotional health and spiritual life. Our gut immediately says, yes, God, I want that life. We head home from church with all the willpower we can muster and we set out to change. But then we go right back to living the exact same lifestyle and nothing changes. It's the same cycle on repeat: stress, tiredness, distraction. We feel stuck yet again, and then we wonder, what am I missing? This method of change simply does not work. What does? Honestly, the solution is very, very simple. If you want to experience the life to the full of Jesus, his non-stop conscious enjoyment of God's presence and world, All you have to do is adopt not only his theology and ethics, but also his lifestyle. Just follow his way. That's it. Just take his life as a template for your own. Take on his habits and practices, and as an apprentice, copy your rabbi's every move. After all, that's the whole point of apprenticeship. So that sums up kind of our rhythms of Jesus series, where we were trying to head with that. And Bree's just going to finish with the Bible passage that we actually started our Rhythms of Jesus series with 4 weeks ago.
Yep. All right, so this comes from Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. This is from the Message translation. Are you tired, worn out, burnt out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. What an awesome invitation. That finishes up our conversation tonight. I hope you enjoyed. We're just going to take a minute to pray, so would you join me? Father God, we just thank you so much for your goodness that is lavished on us. We thank you for the invitation to come and to rest, that you won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on us. We just bless you for that invitation. And God, I ask that you would give us the courage to take that up and to mold our lives to look like the rhythms that Jesus had. We just bless you, God. We thank you for the joy that it is to follow you. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks for joining us.